What is identity? It's a question many who are multicultural have had to deal with their entire lives. Is it the qualities, beliefs, looks, or self-image that make up the person? As a generation of biracial and multi-ethnic children come of age, their experiences may be reshaping how Americans in general perceive race. CTV examined this issue over the past 6 months, delving into the backgrounds and thoughts of 7 different people of diverse backgrounds. In part 1 of my 5-part series called A Bridge Between Cultures, we introduce you to those 7 individuals and learn how they define themselves and how they navigate between cultures.
I'm about half Chinese and about half American.
My mother is Dominican. She grew up there and then she immigrated when she was around 8 years old. My father's family is Ukrainian.
So my mom, Caucasian woman, born and raised in Fredericksburg, Virginia. My father was born and raised, he's African American, in Richmond, Virginia.
I'm Filipino, 5/8 Filipino, 2/8 Russian, and 1/8 Spanish.
My wife certainly had no clue the first time that she saw me that I was half Vietnamese and half American.
My parents divorced when I was 3, and my dad raised us, my dad and stepmother, when they married when I was almost 7. So since I was raised really entirely by Black people in a Black neighborhood, I completely identify as Black.
My mom's Black, my dad's white.
Meet 7 people who have had very diverse experiences growing up. All are mixed culturally, but see themselves quite differently. Dr. Leanna Wenderoth is a child psychologist and says having a foot in different cultures has helped her ability to read people. She says it's a trait she developed when people would try to guess her ethnicity. Her father is white and Jewish, her mother African American. Did the comments come like people guessing your ethnicity, and were you all over the place with that?
A lot of times they would guess. They would also say, oh, but you don't look Black. Or, you know, if I self-identified as Black just for ease, because back in the 70s it was like biracial really wasn't a thing.
Today, many take for granted the challenges biracial people have had fitting into one group or another. The new show Mixed-ish takes a humorous look at some of those issues.
My parents had sent us out into the world with absolutely no warning that being mixed was even a thing.
That was often a real-life scenario for many. While some chose one race over the other, others have wrestled with questions of self-identity. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you have to pick a single race over the other?
When I was younger, and even now, I experienced a little bit of a mixed identity crisis, you know, not feeling like you're enough of either one. Or when I was around Latino kids, my Spanish wasn't perfect because it was a second language, and I didn't speak it well enough, so as a byproduct of that, I wasn't Latino enough. And then, of course, I never felt Ukrainian enough, you know, when with my other cousins, who are like full Ukrainian.
When people look at my name on paper, they might not expect me to look like this. So sometimes there's a little start as I enter the room, or they call out my name and they're not expected to see someone with this type of face answering.
When I was growing up, I think what was really challenging is that there wasn't very many biracial children, you know, I guess, in my neighborhood. And it was really hard sometimes to identify like what your group was, like who you were. Was I going to be part of, you know, the white kids or the Asian kids or the Black kids or the mixed kids? It was like, who were going to be my friends?
Our zip code in Mitchellville was also a zip code for Bowie.
Ramon KORIONOFF says being multicultural allowed him to navigate cultures within his own zip code. He says back in the 70s, he would switch his hometown depending on who he was speaking with. It was Bowie if he was speaking to whites, and Mitchellville if interacting with African Americans. KORIONOFF says he used it as a benchmark to gauge where someone was philosophically.
Changing the zip code where I lived or changing the name of the city was not just a survival mechanism, but more a way to relate to someone that might otherwise relate to you a little differently.
According to the Pew Research Center, many factors shape how people label themselves. It could be how they look or think they're perceived, the languages they speak, or who raised them. All 7 people we interviewed say home was a sanctuary of sorts where they felt love for who they were and didn't always have to navigate between cultures.
My parents raised us to not feel as though we were different. I don't ever remember having a conversation with them where we sat down and they were like, okay, you all are biracial, your mother is, we never had that type of discussion. So we were raised to not look at race and to not pay attention to race, that we are all equal, we all love one another.
And my brother.
A tiny picture.
Oh, yeah.
You said you consider yourself Black. Have you ever felt like census or anything else where you've had to choose or pick, or has it always been that way for you?
To me, it's not a choice. It's what I am. So I just can't imagine it any other way. My entire family that I grew up with is African American. So it would be bizarre to me to be anything else. I mean, they've never treated me any differently. Yeah, he's 3 years older, but I still call him my baby brother.
And stay tuned tomorrow for part 2 of the series, A Bridge Between Cultures, as we hear about the difficulties people of mixed heritage faced while growing up.